So Bernie Sanders just opened up a can of whoop-ass on Donald Trump in front of a giant crowd at Coachella. One of the performers, her name is Claro, she asked Bernie Sanders and Congressman Maxwell Frost to introduce her band to the crowd of tens of thousands. Earlier this day, he spoke to a crowd of nearly 40,000 protesters in Los Angeles, and it's being reported that these might be the two largest crowds that Bernie has ever spoken at. I'm not sure the validity of those claims, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were true. So let's watch the full video and then we'll talk about it.
Please give it up for Senator Bernie Sanders!
Don't tell me this man can't be president right now. Don't tell me he's too old. Bro is out there giving more speeches, galvanizing more crowds than The Rock during WrestleMania. He's doing more to oppose the Trump administration than 99% of Democrats in office combined. He's drawing the largest crowds of his career at 83 years old. So let me do the math. He's 83 right now, which means if he won in 2028, he'd be 87 when he took office, 91 at the start of his second term, and 95 when he was done. Yeah, he'd be way too old. God damn it. Way on. Everyone on the political spectrum, regardless if you're progressive, centrist, conservative, or anything in between, everyone should be fighting against oligarchy and should be agreeing with Bernie on his policies to make the economy work for all of us, not just for the ultra wealthy, in the ways that it is right now. Many commentators on the left are pointing this out, and I think it's pretty obvious too. And it's that the reason conservatives won so big in 2024, the reason why Trump won the White House, they took over the Senate, the House, everything, is because they were all united on a narrative. And that narrative being the Democrats, the trans people, the immigrants, they are the reasons that your life sucks. I know you're struggling to put food on the table. I know you're struggling financially in all kinds of ways. It's the Democrats' fault. They scapegoated immigrants and trans people. And that narrative, even though it's completely incorrect, like trans people and immigrants are not to blame for any of the major problems in our country, the narrative was able to convince enough people. An effective narrative that weaves through all of our policies, all of our left-wing policies, needs to be as strong and as convincing or more than what the Republicans used in 2024. But the narrative needs to be the correct narrative, and that is that the billionaires, the large corporations, the ultra wealthy have rigged every major system in their favor, and that's why our lives suck. That's why we can't afford healthcare. That's why we can't afford groceries. That's why housing prices are out of control. And the list goes on and on and on. This needs to be the center of the narrative coming from the left and even coming from the Democratic Party itself heading into the midterm. A while ago, Bernie was using the term genocide, and in a couple of interviews, he referred to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza as a genocide, because that's what it is. But since then, he's sort of backed off on using that sentiment, and it's disappointing for sure. And he obviously knows that the situation is wrong. In the past, he's called out for Israel to be held accountable for their war crimes and crimes against humanity. He needs to go back to using the correct terminology. Genocide and ethnic cleansing is what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. This is one issue that Bernie does not get a pass on, just because he's my GOAT. Maybe I should say he's my GOAT on economic policy. On foreign policy, however, he's been anti-war his entire career, but in the past decade, he's been shy to call out Israel, and he's been hesitant to be as fierce on this issue as I know he can be. I could say a lot more. Yeah, man, he's on fire. It's Bernie 2016 all over again, except this time, we know he's not going to run. And maybe that's a good thing, because then he won't get backstabbed by the Democratic Party by rigging the primaries in favor of centrist candidates. Now, my only criticism of this speech that he gave, if you can even call it a criticism, is that Bernie should have dug a little bit deeper into a couple of the specific things that the Trump administration has done. Like, get into the actual specifics. Mentioning climate change is good and necessary, but it hits really hard when he talks about the dichotomy between the real issues that most Americans face and the actual priorities of this administration. Two very different things. Two different realities, right? Like 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. There's hundreds of thousands of homeless veterans. Healthcare and housing is so damn unaffordable right now that it's not even funny. People are scared to fly in airplanes because of the crashes that have happened and the publicity around it. Medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy, like I mentioned. Gun violence is worse here than in every other major developed nation combined. Diabetes and obesity, and by extension, the gross food system that exacerbates diseases, are terrible epidemics here, still. All of these things and more are happening, while at the same time, the Trump administration is focused on winning a culture war instead of implementing true populist domestic policy on the economic side and actual libertarian ideals on the social side of things. He's more focused on scapegoating immigrants and trans people. He's focused on changing names of bodies of water just to piss Mexico off. He's focused on manipulating the stock market by playing around with tariffs to allow his billionaire buddies that got him elected to profit billions off of his intentional crashing of the market. This dichotomy of two very different realities is what Bernie has always been so great at illustrating. This is Bernie's superpower. He needs to channel his inner George Carlin and put this administration's blatant hypocrisy on blast. So many people, specifically those on the right, but even moderates in both parties, have been conditioned to believe that Bernie equals socialism, which equals bad. But he's not even a socialist. He's a democratic socialist, which is a completely different thing. You guys already know what it is, but it's essentially the idea that vital services that serve the public, such as healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and several other industries, should be nationalized to remove the mafia middleman that is private health insurance, or private insurance in general, and to guarantee healthcare to all people, free at the point of service, just like nearly every developed nation does. There's obviously many things that go into being a democratic socialist, but nationalizing healthcare, nationalizing pharma is a couple of the big ones. I wanted to show this tweet because it has 1.5 million views and over 35,000 likes. And this is a person who responded on Twitter to Bernie's video of him speaking at Coachella. Even though this tweet is profoundly stupid, I still think it's important to address it. He said, "So let me get this straight. Bernie Sanders went to Coachella, an event where tickets range from $700 to $1,300, and an order of nachos goes for more than $100, to lecture about oligarchy? Is that right?" Like I said, this tweet is embarrassingly stupid. This guy is hinting at the idea that maybe it's hypocritical for Bernie to be preaching against oligarchy to rich people. No, dude, that's exactly who should be hearing this. Oligarchy literally is defined as a small group of people having control over a country or organization or institution. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone needs to hear this message. Poor people, rich people, the middle class, everyone should be joining the anti-oligarchy movement. I'm assuming he's calling Bernie a hypocrite here. Saying that he shouldn't be giving a speech about oligarchy to rich people is like saying that you should not give a speech about fixing the opioid epidemic to a crowd of drug-addicted people on the streets of San Francisco. It's like, no, that's exactly who should be hearing it. Committing obvious logical fallacies seem to be the norm for these MAGA bot accounts. Another reason this is stupid is because it lacks context. Bernie had just given a giant speech to nearly 40,000 protesters in the streets of Los Angeles earlier this day. He went to Coachella because a performer invited him to speak, and it's only a couple hours away. And it's a great opportunity to get your message out in front of possibly 100,000 people and many more online who would see this. The more people he can recruit to this anti-oligarchy movement, the better. Saying it's hypocritical to speak about this issue to a group of rich people is absolutely backwards. This guy is just jealous and scared that the opposition movement is for real this time, and that Trump is already historically unpopular compared to other presidents this far into their term. His approval rating is plummeting faster than you can say the word Trump meat writer. It's so obvious to me that Bernie is doing something correct when right-wing Twitter attacks him for speaking at a concert. Maybe they're just jealous that none of their politicians get invited to speak at these events. Heck, they won't even do town halls anymore because of how unpopular this administration is right now. Yes, the Democratic Party's approval rating is in the trash, but so is the Republican Party's. The reason the Democratic Party's approval rating is so bad right now is not merely because their policies are unpopular, because broadly their policies are more popular than Republicans, but it's because so many people believe that the Democrats are not fighting, they are not opposing the Trump administration as strong as they could be. So yeah, both parties are unpopular right now. It's independents like Bernie and true advocates for change like Jon Stewart 2028 that will get us out of these dark times.